All right, so now that we've got our bumper removed, we've got to go ahead and remove our ACC module right here so we can relocate it in the new bumper. First, we've got this little black plastic cover, and this just pops out, and we will not reuse this, so you can set that aside. And next, we're going to remove the whole intercooler shutter system, which is just 4 bolts. They're all 8mm bolts. We're going to go ahead and unplug this guy back here. And then this plug will have to come off its holder on the back. There it goes. And then this whole piece comes out together. First off, I'm going to remove the ACC module. This is just held in with 3 little clips here. I just stick something behind it to pop these clips free. They're kind of hard to pop off by hand. And then it has a plug on the back, little push tab. And that unplugs. We'll set that aside. The bracket that it goes onto is held in the same way. Just 3 more little tabs you can pop off. And we won't need this, so you can set that aside. And then we need to remove the wiring on the back side here. So there's one more clip, or one more plug right on the top. Just slide that red tab up. And then that'll unplug. And then we've got 3 zip ties here down at the bottom that we're going to have to snip off. And then one more at the top up here. And then the last one's on the side. You can just pull it off. And we'll set this aside for now. We've got to separate these 2 plugs. We'll need the first plug that operates the shutters to remain in the same spot, but this is the plug for the ACC module, and we'll have to separate that so we have room to plug it into our where we're going to relocate that module in our bumper. So we'll start by unwrapping the factory covering on the harness. All right, so now we have separated our 2 plugs. We go back over each run of these wires separately and cover them to protect them. We have our own wire loom that we use. You can use pretty much any kind of wire covering, or you can even get this fabric tape to replace it the way that the factory does it, but we use some wire loom just to make it look a little bit nicer. So now that we've got our wires covered up and protected, we can install it back on the shutter system here. Plug with the red clip here will go back onto the shutter motor. And when you plug that back in, make sure to press that red tab back down. And then we replace the factory clips that hold the wires in. All right, so we've got factory replacement zip ties here that pop into the holes, and we can secure them just like they come from the factory. Those are available online or at like AutoZone. If you don't have those, you can also use something like this. You just put a zip tie through that, and it's got an adhesive back, and you can stick that down in the same spot. Or even if you wanted, you can just take just a regular zip tie, stick it through the hole, and zip tie that in, just so you can secure these so you know that they're not going to get pinched when we reinstall this shutter system. And we're leaving the ACC part of this harness separate so that we can run that with our bumper later. So with that back all in place, we're ready to put this back in the vehicle. Drops right back in place. The wires go over the frame rail here. And then we put that back in with our 4 bolts that we took out. And then we need to make sure that we remember to put this plug back on its clip back here we took it off of earlier, and plug that back in. And then we'll leave this for when we get our bumper put on. We can relocate the module into our bumper and have this harness ready to plug into that. So here's that ACC module we popped off earlier. We've got to modify it a little bit to get it to fit in our bumper. The first thing we're going to do is these clips that are inside these holes we're going to get rid of. Our bumper doesn't use those, so I just take some cutters, I cut them up, and then they kind of just fall apart. All right, with those out, we can install our top bracket for the ACC module. This will come with all of the hardware for the bumper, and it just slips over like that and then bolts into our bumper with these ears. I'll hold this in place with zip ties just to keep it all together as one piece. Trim these off. And then to get our bottom bracket to fit, which will just sit right there, we've got to trim off this bottom piece here just so it can be flush with that. So I'll take a marker, mark where I need it to be trimmed so that it's not sticking out below that bracket there. I'll just take my cutters here and trim that off. This will sit on the bottom without having interference with the bracket. We can go ahead and drop it in the bumper. All right, so we've got to mount this on the driver's side so that the wiring is long enough to reach it. We can't quite get it to reach over there, so we always mount ours over here. All right, first I'm going to drop in the small mount that it sits on. That goes right in the center there. And you stick your Allen head bolt in from the bottom. Put a washer on it and then a nut. And then leave that loose. We'll tighten that up after we get the ACC module fully installed. You'll also want to make sure that your bracket is taller on the passenger side of the vehicle and shorter on the driver's side. And then our ACC module is going to come right in here and sit on that bracket. The top bracket bolts right in here. And then washer and nut on the back of those as well. First I tighten the top bolts, and then once those are in place, I tighten the bottom one. And then this is the wiring harness that plugs into the back of the module. We already split this apart earlier. We're gonna have to run that through the back of the bumper and bring it up to here. All right, and then right in from the bottom of the bumper, you'll be able to see a hole that you can run this wiring right through, and that'll get it up here to reach the ACC module. You wanna make sure that if you do this before you tighten your mounting bolts, that you don't get it behind there and squish that wire. That's why I always do it after I've already fully mounted my bumper.